Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you to talk about a subject very, very dear to my heart. I'd like to talk a little bit about wealth creation as a start, and then figure out the linkage between that and air and water. If we study the period from 45 to 70 in the United States and extrapolate it to the rest of the world, wealth was created by manufacturing. The decade of the 70s was quite different. It was the area of commodity wealth. 2 Arab oil embargoes, shortfalls in the Russian crop, the Chinese crop, anchovies not running off the coast of Peru, late plantings, early harvests, etc. Soybeans hit $10, gold $800, silver $50, etc. So it was an era of commodity wealth. If we take a look at the 80s, it was a different kind of commoditization. It was the commoditization of financial instruments, the birth of interest rate futures, the birth of mortgage-backed securities, the birth of asset liability management, the birth of private financing. We gave rise through the creation of junk bonds to companies that had no access to the capital markets and commoditized their bank debt. Ted Turner at CNN, Terry McGraw with the cell phone, Bill McGowan, who competed with AT&T, all had access. The 90s was yet another period of wealth creation, and that was the commoditization of information. Intel, Cisco, and Cisco went public in 1990, allowing the birth in the mid-90s of the World Wide Web, Mosaic, new languages. Ultimately, that morphed into Google, Twitter, Facebook, and all kinds of social commodities. The hypothesis that I'd like all of you to consider is that the 21st century value creation will be in the commoditization of yet a new class of commodities, air and water. Well, that's a pretty big assumption, and do we have any historical basis to do it? The answer is yes. If we take a look at 4 separate examples: the Dutch East India Company in 1605, the birth of wheat trading in 1848 in Chicago, the birth of the mortgage-backed security, Ginnie Mae's in 70, and the creation of trading in acid rain rights in 90, we have 4 separate examples. I was privileged to be involved in the development of 2 of those markets. Not the Dutch East India Company or wheat trading in the 19th century, but the 2 in the 20th century. And it appears you get 7 steps. You have a big structural change that goes on. People start to get commodities defined. We create evidences of ownership, because we don't really trade wheat or corn or soybeans. We trade warehouse receipts and things like that. That's followed by informal trading, exchanges, futures and options, and complex OTC transactions. Air and water around the world, because of the population that we are seeing around the world, and particularly in China, have created that structural change. 7 billion people on a planet cannot live without somehow rationing these scarce resources. Well, how do you deal with a problem like that? What's the vexing question you must face? The vexing question is, you can do it 2 ways. You can do it, number 1, by command and control. You can go to a specific factory and say, cut this, do that, take this out, change the fuel you burn, and do it that way. Cumbersome, one by one. You can do it a second way. Everybody has to cut by 10%. And just that across the board, like you would a budget or anything else of that matter. Well, that's okay, but it doesn't allow flexibility. The third thing you can do is what is called cap and trade, where you cut by 10%, but if an individual emitter cuts by more than 10, they can take those reductions and sell them to another person who, let's say because of technology, insufficient acreage, can't build the abatement equipment quickly. So rather than have them shut down the factory, they can temporarily hedge by buying the reductions of somebody else. The only assumption is that the cost curves for the different emitter are different. Thus, the Ricardian, the gains from trade are possible because some people are more efficient while others are less efficient. The success of this program really started in 1990. I'll see if I... We had a huge problem in the United States in the 80s. We were burning a lot of coal. The economy was thriving. The emissions were very, very high, 18 million tons. And the government passed a law, the Clean Air Act of 1990, and mandated that by 2010, emissions would be 50% lower. It's relevant to go over this example for 1 minute because the debate about climate change almost is analogous to the debate about acid rain. One, it would cripple the economy. Two, it was unfathomable to make a 50% reduction. Three, electricity prices would go through the roof. And four, America would lose its competitiveness if it had to comply. And fifth, it couldn't physically be done. Well, if you look at 204 to 207, this simple graph illustrates that it was done. Real electricity prices today are lower than they were in 1990, even pre the collapse of 2008. Emissions have been cut from 18 million tons to 9 million tons. Point two, done, no ripple about it. Three, it was estimated that this would cost too much to the economy, tens of billions of dollars, and it would basically cripple the ability to produce power cheaply and drive manufacturing. In fact, the entire cost to the U.S. economy of $14 trillion will be about $1 billion this year. The medical benefits, just the medical benefits, associated with less lung disease in the United States will derive $123 billion of reduced medical costs associated with lung disease. I don't know, but as a student of economics and somebody who's been in markets for 35-odd years, I've never heard of or seen a program with a cost-benefit ratio of 123 to 1. And people made movies about it. Michael Douglas, Black Rain, it was going to end the planet. It was going to be horrific. Nothing happened. We don't even hear about it. It's not written about. It's become totally irrelevant. Well, how does that translate to China? And before we talk about that, let me mention there's a phenomenon in economics known as the Kuznets curve. It's just common sense. And the Kuznets curve simply says, as you get more wealthy, you concentrate on other things than making money, okay? You look at your environment, you look at the world about you, you look at poverty. If your belly is not bloated from hunger and you can drink water, you can begin to think of your fellow human beings.